Hello, good morning. My name is James, and this is Prime Media Studio. I'm here to reveal to you the top 5 richest country in Africa. And straight to number 5. Number 5, we have Morocco. Morocco, number 5. The Kingdom of Morocco is a market economy that has developed an average annual rate of 4% over the previous decade, with a projected GDP of 142.9 billion in 2022, making it the 5th richest country in Africa. The automobile industry, 28.5%. The agricultural and agri-food sector, 21.8%. And phosphate, of which Morocco owns the world's largest deposit, are the country's 3 primary export industry. Tourism, which accounts for 7% of the country's GDP, contributes significantly to Morocco's status as one of the richest countries in Africa. It is the source of around 550,000 direct jobs, which supports several million people. In August 2022, tourists to Morocco generated an all-time high of 1.5 billion in income. The European Union is Morocco's largest commercial partner, accounting for 53.1% of imports, 66.7% of export. Spain, 15.6%, France, 12.0%, and China, 10.0%, are the top 3 nations that supply Morocco. The country's main reform and programs have had positive outcome as seen by the country's continual growth in GDP. Despite this, vulnerability persists as evidenced by the disastrous agricultural season caused by the severe drought. In addition to its grand reputation as one of the richest African countries, Morocco has the unpleasant distinction of being one of the continent's most unequal nations, with extremely poor social mobility as assets dependent mostly on inheritance. Some statistics indicate that the son of top Moroccan executive is far more likely to belong to the same socio-economic class as his father than a son of laborer. The economy of Morocco is that most of developing nations with diversified economic structure. Since 1993, the government has pursued a program of privatizing state corporation and liberalizing several economic sectors. While in recent years, several administrations have pursued a strategy of economic diversification, agriculture still employs 43% of Morocco's active population, despite accounting for just 14% of GDP. In 2019, weathering the global economic crisis, Morocco's economy grew by 5.0%, due in part to the over-protectionism of Moroccan banks and the success of agricultural sector. In addition to being one of the richest countries in Africa, Morocco is among the world top 30 countries for the offshore industry. Growth owing to the part of geographical and cultural proximity and to a greater degree, the time zone. Morocco has signed multiple trade agreements with other nations, including the Morocco-US Free Trade Agreement, the Morocco-Turkey Free Trade Agreement, GAFTA, the Morocco-Canada Free Trade Agreement, and the Advanced Trade Agreement with European Union. And that is the top 5 richest country in Africa. And then straight up, let's go down to the top the top 4 richest country in Africa, being Algeria. So Algeria is the top 4 richest country in Africa, according to this report. Algeria is the one of the continent primary oil and gas producer. The continent third economic power in terms of GDP, PPP, the 4th richest country in Africa. Like many OPEC countries, Algeria is extremely reliant on its oil export and worldwide market volatility. Since gaining independence in 1962, Algeria has established a dense industrial base through significant economic initiatives. Notwithstanding enormous accomplishment in the form of roads, highways, college, hospitals, industry, housing, metros, tramways, etc., which now cement in its position as one of the richest countries in Africa. The Algerian economy has gone through a number of turbulent phases. Through the 1980s, the Algerian economy had enormous challenges, particularly in 1986 during the anti-shortage and stabilization plan, when the oil counter-shock struck a severe blow to its virtually rentier economy. Algeria initiated structural changes in the early 1990s, concretizing the shift to the market economy. In 2001, the administration of Abdelaziz Bouteflika proposed changes to liberalize several industries and open the nation to investors. The transition from a plan to a market economy is still ongoing, with many sectors and services still controlled by the government. Although Algeria is the richest country in the Maghreb, its economy remains extremely reliant on oil and gas earnings, which are the most country primary source of income. The nation has been unsuccessful in diversifying its economy and creating a global competitive manufacturing base. Despite this shortcoming, Algeria has a decent infrastructure and adequate standard of living thanks to the oil and gas income. In 2013, the Algerian government demonstrated its financial prowess by canceling $902 million in debt, $902 million in debt it owned on behalf of 14 African Union member states. Wow, that is so great. So Algeria is the 4th or the top 4 richest country in Africa. So let's go down to top 3 richest country in Africa, being South Africa. South Africa. So South Africa, according to this report, is the top 5 or top 3 richest country in Africa. Algeria, top 4, Morocco, top 5. And then let's go to South Africa. South Africa, the most industrialized and technologically sophisticated nation on the continent, is the 3rd richest country in Africa. It features a 2-speed economy with one sector on par with industrialized nations and another in severe need of basic infrastructure. Although the natural resources extraction industry, particularly chromium, manganese, gold, and platinum, remain one of the largest in the country, contributing $13.5 billion annually to the country's gross domestic product. South Africa's economy has diversified since the end of apartheid, particularly in the service sector. Being the richest country in the Southern Africa, South Africa accounts for 25% of the continent's economy and plays a significant role in the region growth. In 2019, the financial sector of South Africa contributed $41.4 billion to the country's gross domestic product. And by 2021, South African financial institutions were handling more than $41.41 trillion in assets. South Africa is the growing market economy with enormous natural resources and well-developed legal, communication, energy and transport sector, as well as the major stock exchange in Africa, which ranks 16 in the world. Despite its modern infrastructure and status as one of the richest countries in Africa, South Africa economic development is hampered by its inability to enable effective delivery of commodities to big hubs and its inconsistent power supply. The wealthiest 1% of the South African population owns 70.9% of the country's total wealth, while the poorest 60% hold just 7%. Nonetheless, the South African and is the most valued currency in the Southern Africa and one of the strongest legal tenders in Africa. The fact that many Africans travel to the South Africa to make more money than in their native country is one of the country's claim to the fame as one of the African richest nation. Wow. So South Africa is the top 3 richest country in Africa. So let's go down to top 2 richest country in Africa. Now, the top 2 richest country in Africa as of now is Egypt. Now let's go down to number 2, being Egypt. Occupying Northwest Africa, divided by the large Nile River Valley, Egypt is the leading economic force on the African continent in the terms of GDP, PPP, and the second richest country in Africa. Its economy was largely centralized under President Gamal Abdel Nasser, but it was liberalized under President Anwar Sadat and Hosni Mubarak due to tough reform. Egypt reformed an economic openness program undertaken between 2006 and 2008 to attract international investment and drive development, helped the country attain record high annual growth rate of 7%, catapulting into the rank of Africa's richest nation. This seismic boom may have lasted longer if not for the global financial crisis of the late 2000s, which lowered growth to the 4.7% and negatively impacted export-driven industries, notably manufacturing and tourism. Considering the country's arid environment, the majority of human and economic activity is centered near the Nile, and its economy, unlike the of many African nations, is diverse and largely in North Africa. In 2015, 16% of Egypt's GDP was attributed to manufacturing sector, 13% to wholesale and retail commerce. Despite Egypt's rapid rise to pinnacle of Africa's richest North African nation, the fact that has in, that has a substantial 40% of population lives below the poverty line is triggered instability in political and civic sphere as well as revolution. Wow, that's great. So the top two is Egypt. The, the top two richest country in Africa currently is Egypt. So let's go down. Let's go up to the number one, top one richest country in Africa as of today. This one is shocking, but let's see what is there. Nigeria. So Nigeria is the top one richest country in Africa as of the time of this report. With a nominal GDP of 504.2 billion, Nigeria is the richest country in Africa due to the human potential, abundance of natural resources, its GDP in purchasing power, parity of $1.3 billion, which is the second largest on the continent, despite a per capita gross domestic product far below pre-independence level. Nigeria remains the continent's most populous and main oil producer. Although Nigeria Africa's strongest economic power, its economic structure is akin to that of many other nations on the continent. Two-thirds of the population now live below the absolute poverty level of $1 per day, up from 40% in 1985. Most of Nigeria's economic advancement is concentrated in the south, while the central nodes are less developed, with the majority of economic activity occurring in the coastal zone, particularly around Lagos. Since 2008, the government has shown a readiness to embrace the economic changes advised by the International Monetary Fund, of which Nigeria is a member, in order to preserve its position as the richest country in West Africa and the Sahel region. These changes include modernizing the financial system, regulating salary, demands to reduce inflation, and addressing regional conflict over ownership of clothing industrial revenues. Nigeria is member of OPEC and the World Bank, but is 124th ranking out of 180 nations on Transparency International 2008 Corruption Perception Index severely tarnishes its reputation as the Africa First Sun power. Wow! So from these results and from these reports, Nigeria is currently the top one richest country in Africa. So I'll leave you for now. My name is James. See you next time.